America almost had a third Dakota. And nobody, not even the US government, had any idea it existed, leaving it a lawless state. So how could the United States make such a massive mistake for nearly a decade? Before there were states, when this area was first developing, it was known as the Dakota Territory. One by one, new territories slowly started to form and join the Union, leaving the territory with 5 new states. Or did it? Let's back up a bit. After Idaho and Montana were formed, the Dakota Territory had this perfectly shaped square region, except for this little protruding piece on its western side. With that new space, the United States decided to declare a new territory in the region, Wyoming. But there's a problem. According to the territory's bill, it has no mention of the land here. And if you look at the other territories' bills too, they don't have it either. For a while, they just included it as a part of Wyoming's territory. Then, slowly, year after year, they pushed the border back further and further till it was gone. It vanished, but the land was still there, unclaimed. But how could map makers make such an obvious mistake? Well, they didn't have satellites. I think what a lot of people overlook about these older maps is that they were drawn by hand, by someone who had to walk across it, not even knowing where they were going. So there were many imperfections, especially along the Idaho-Montana border. The border they share follows along the Rockies and the Bitterroot Mountains. It's harder to be precise when it's a natural border, as opposed to it being a straight line. So there were a lot of variations when they were mapping the area. But weren't there people living there? Well, unless you count grizzly bears as US citizens, no, there weren't. It was untouched terrain. And if that doesn't convince you, then how about the fact that the whole country had just gotten over a civil war? Do you think they're gonna put their priorities in some patch of grass in Wyoming? And so, nobody knew about it for nearly 9 years, until 1873. So how did they eventually find out about it? Well, after hours and hours of searching the internet, I came up with a couple of leads. First, I found this geological survey of the boundaries between Idaho and Montana. I found they had built a post on the corner with its east face facing towards Wyoming, its southwest face facing towards Idaho, and its northwest face facing towards Montana, with it intentionally focusing on a second section on the crest of the Bitterroot and Rocky Mountains. Furthermore, it talked about a man named Alonzo V. Richards. After a little bit more digging, I found out Alonzo was a surveyor of southern and western Wyoming. Furthermore, his brother William Richards accompanied him, and he journaled everything about the journey. So these guys must have been the people that found Lost Dakota, right? Well, no. In the original report, it discussed Alonzo's journey in 1874, but Congress had passed the bill regarding the Lost Dakota Territory in 1873. So most likely the two surveyed the area to confirm Congress's borders were accurate, so it can't be them. Then I discovered this article about a Yellowstone expedition in 1873. The years matched and the Lost Dakota Territory was part of West Yellowstone. So maybe, but another dead end. The whole thing was a military expedition confronting the Sioux tribe. Then I realized you're not gonna be able to tell state boundaries on foot. I'm sure what happened was after the maps became more and more precise, they realized their mistake and just adjusted it. Anyways, after they found out about this little chunk of land, it wasn't part of Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming. It was still connected to the greater Idaho Territory, which was still well over 200 miles away from the main territory, but technically was still under the Dakota jurisdiction. So in 1873, Congress passed a bill that allowed this small bit of territory into Montana. and after this whole ordeal, people gave this small bit of land the nickname Lost Dakota.